Welcome to the Gaudium at Spes podcast, where every other week we bring you Catholic teachings and stories of faith from people throughout the Diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee. Now, here are your hosts, Sharmane Adams and Chez Filippini.
Welcome to the Gaudium at Spes podcast. I'm sitting here with Chez, my co-host, and this is our official second episode, Chez.
Right. Very excited, Sharmane. Good to be with you. If you missed our first episode with Bishop Bill, we just gave a layout of what we're doing here with the Gaudium at Spes podcast, so go back and listen to it. But we're excited today. We have our very first official guest on the show, which is that man over there.
Father Michael Hartley. He's a great priest in our diocese and actually was ordained in 2016 in the Diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee. And today he will be joining us to speak about his faith journey. So welcome, Father Michael.
Thank you, Sharmane and Chez. It's great to be here. And I love that our diocese is doing things like this now. So we're happy to let the people know. If you don't live in our parishes, then you don't know who we are, most likely. So this is cool. And I'm happy to share my priesthood and life with your audience.
Oh, they're going to know about our diocese. That's for sure.
Indeed. Well, Father Michael, our podcast is the Gaudium at Spes podcast. We take our cue from the great document of the Second Vatican Council, Gaudium at Spes, the pastoral constitution on the church's relationship with the modern world. And that starts out, the famous first line, where it gets its title from, is the joys and hopes, the griefs and anxieties of men of this age, especially those who are poor or in any way afflicted. These are the joys and the hopes, the griefs and anxieties of the followers of Christ. So we like to ask our guests as we start out, what are your joys and hopes? Or maybe even what are your griefs and anxieties that are impacting you as a priest, as a disciple in this current time?
Yeah. I mean, joys and hopes, we live in hope. You know, that's what a lot of our church documents remind us. And Gaudium at Spes is another great one that reminds us of that Jesus is risen, he is Lord. And no matter what we're going through, you know, there's always reason to hope. You know, the great St. Paul said that as well. But grieves, what's the other one?
Griefs and anxieties.
Griefs and anxieties. Yeah, those are daily, you know. No, that's just part of being a minister of Jesus Christ. That's, you know, we're helping people in our own grief and anxieties, but mainly it helps us because we get to focus on theirs. And so that's one of the things as a priest that we're trying to help people get through this world, especially this past couple of years. It's been, you know, a challenge for
Indeed.
For people in general.
You speak of joys, priest. It was a little bit of time ago, but how was your Easter season as a priest?
Yeah. So for us, Easter at our parish is wild. We have visitors from all over, and obviously with Florida being one of the more open places you can go, that continued to be the case for our Easter season. So it was great to, you know, begin Mass reminding them that just a year before, you know, we did Mass by ourselves. It was me and a GoPro camera. And this year our church was, you know, as full as it could be. And then we had double Masses going on in our new Family Life Center we just constructed. And we had chairs outside everywhere and speakers everywhere. And, you know, so we're happy to have, you know, probably about 1,000 to 1,200 people with us for Easter Sunday.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah. Now, those of you who may not know, St. Rita's is located near 30A. So you probably had quite a few vacationers for Easter, which was exciting, new faces and familiar faces, and finally being back together, which is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. We are the 30A parish, you know, so if you're vacationing in 30A, I grew up not knowing what that even was, but apparently everybody north of the Panhandle loves the 30A vacation area, and it's a huge portion of our boundary that people come and visit, and they've found a second home at St. Rita's.
Do you have a 30A sticker on the back of your car?
I don't know, because I'm a local, and I think I basically wear that 30A sticker on my heart, much like the graces of my baptism. So I don't need to post it on my vehicles and whatnot. I put St. Rita swag on my vehicles. So
we judge no one, by the way, who puts a 30A sticker on their car, by the way. If you don't know what they are, blue, sunshine is the 0, right?
Yellow.
Yeah.
30 is white.
Some good branding, some excellent branding.
Wish I was part of that.
I know.
Yep.
Dang it.
If you go like to Louisiana, Texas, you see 30A stickers everywhere. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to get them to have more St. Rita stickers in those areas as well. But,
hey, that's great. So tell us a little bit about, because I know we're not going to be talking about 30A this entire time that we're together, which we would That would be
we
nice.
could.
But let's talk about you and your faith journey and where it all began. Share with us about maybe a little bit about your childhood and where your faith started.
Yeah, awesome. I guess that's why I'm here to share my story. How did I end up where I am today? How am I on this wonderful show with Sharmane and Chez right now? All by God's grace. But it began for me in Jacksonville, Florida. So that's where I grew up. Pretty typical Catholic family. There a big Catholic school system there in Jacksonville, and we, grew up just being a typical, cultural Catholic community, whatever you want to call it. So I went to Catholic school, Assumption Catholic School. So shout out to Assumption, where I grew up. And then typically if you go to Assumption, then you go to the Catholic high school, Bishop Kenny, which is pretty much shares a campus together. But I grew up where there was 5 of us as kids, and obviously my parents, my mom and dad. And it was very important to them that we went to the same school that both of them went to, and both of them went to Bishop Kenny High School. And it was just a never ending cycle. I think my little sister, Rachel, was the first of the Hartley family of like all of our cousins to not at least go to Bishop Kenny for 1 year. So that was a big change. She went to actually where she met Chez, where he worked before here was St. Joseph.
St. Joseph Academy.
Yeah.
Oldest Catholic high school, I think, in the state of Florida. 1866, started by the Sisters of St. Joseph. Amazing story. But yeah, I was a first-year theology teacher, and Rachel was a senior. Was not in my classes, but we have corresponded very quickly over our mutual connection with you. Yeah.
So the two of you go way back.
A little bit.
How long have you known each other?
I mean, so I don't date back to the Assumption Bishop Kenny days, but we first met each other in 2000. Well, I started 2007 at Florida State, and Father Hartley was 2006. So we met at Florida State at the acclaimed, wonderful, unbelievable Catholic campus ministry there, CSU, and run by the Brotherhood of Hope. And just like so many friendships and relationships that have marked our diocese, we met each other there, had a big network of friends there. So yeah, we've known each other now, 14 years, just about.
Yeah.
Whoa.
It's unbelievable that's been that long.
Okay, so let's go back. Mm-hmm. You're talking about your family and so forth, and so go on. We kind of went a little bit off track.
Yeah. And so faith-wise, that was just so much. I know the term cultural Catholic is a very real thing. And it was just like the only people not Catholic that I knew were like the kids on my baseball team. And it didn't really matter because we didn't talk about faith or Jesus or anything. We just played baseball because we were awesome at baseball. But it was just your Catholic bubble. I didn't really know what not being Catholic was like. Now, that didn't necessarily change the way I lived my life. I think I grew up with moral standards and knowing how to be a good person, but knowing what faith is for us and what it should be, that happened, years later as, growing up and maturing as a young man. I learned through, very strong encounter in college time, but, learning as a priest now, like how to get people their sacraments, when you're at a Catholic school, it's so simple because you study it and it's part of your education to receive your sacraments. Now I see the challenge for some people that don't know that's what CCD is all about, or faith formation programs are all about, is to get them their sacraments. So all that stuff just, looking back, was just so, taken for granted for me, like the graces of actual, what those things meant, like being in communion with the Lord at the altar and receiving the Holy Spirit, in confirmation, those things. That was actually one of the things when I was joining the seminary. Bishop Gaudium at the time of St. Augustine, one of the things he mentioned to me before I signed up for this great diocese was, all the grace from your sacramental life began in St. Augustine. So you really should come back home to us. And then, my response a lot of times is, well, I met Jesus in this diocese. And so this is where I wanted to, to serve Jesus, was in the Panhandle. But
so you met Jesus in this diocese. Okay. Everyone listen to that. That's pretty awesome. Others can do that as well.
Not the first, not the last.
That's right. Tell us how you met Jesus in our diocese.
Yeah. Well, so how I got here was probably the better part of my story. So when I was 13, so again, my sister Kelly was 14, and then our older sisters were at FSU at the time. They went to college there. And then our baby sister was, I think 5 maybe. if that math is right. Somebody will check the math. My mom will probably be watching and check the math for me. But our father had his first heart attack. So our father, Eugene, that's where I got my middle name, Michael Eugene, probably because I was his only son. So I had to pass on some of that to him or from him. But so he passed away. So he had his first heart attack on Father's Day on our way to church in 2001, Father's Day 2001. Me and my sisters, and I think my sister and my mom were at a Girl Scout thing. And so it was just maybe my two older sisters, and it was summertime. So they were home, especially Father's Day weekend. They probably just came home, but I don't remember exactly. I know that of these two events I'm going to mention, I was the only one that was present for both of them. So it's another interesting thing that happened in our history, but we were at a stoplight, and I remember being just, obviously just a kid. So I guess then I was probably 12 in 2001, but, he just didn't go at the green light, and we're like, what, Dad, the green light? And then like my sister Angela's freaking out in the front seat, and, I jumped out, and we tried to get people to help us and things. And I remember running and knocking on this right across from that light was another church, like a Pentecostal church, which is weird. We always went to 8:00 mass. So they like weren't having services, or maybe they were in the middle. I don't know. It was all kind of a blur, and I was just trying to get somebody else banging on their doors. But by the time I got back, like the person behind us that had pulled up, was trying to help. I guess cell phones weren't like as helpful as they are today back then. But anyway, so that seemed like an event that took a million years to be resolved. I remember we were like helping pull my dad out of the car, and even just forgetting to put the car in park because we weren't moving. And anyway, paramedics came eventually after 50 years, it seemed like, and took him. So then from that point on, our dad had lost so much oxygen to his brain through this massive heart attack event that he never really recovered fully. He did get to the point where he was driving again. They had let him come back to work, but there was just his personality changes from all of that were so different that it made people at work. He worked for the railroad CSX for his whole life, since he was probably, I think, 19 till, he died at 44. But, and I think they've been good to us and my mom, everything. So CSX, we love you. But then, so about almost a year later, May 18th of 2002 is when he had another massive heart attack event. And it was a morning again. I was the only one that was there for both of these. This time it was me and my sister Kelly. I think we're the only ones home. My other two sisters, I don't know where they were. And I don't remember which day of the week this was, but it was right before our, 8th grade exams or something like that. Excuse me. But, our neighbor had been pulling by. My dad was mowing the grass, and they were banging on our door. And then, I ran out, again, the second time calling the, 911 and all that kind of stuff. But this event it was another just huge heart attack that this time he didn't recover at all. They never revived him. They never anything. So that, was a pretty, tragic event for all of us. For me, I don't want to say, any of us struggled harder than others. My two older sisters were older. My Irish twin and me were about to start high school, and like at that age of life where, we weren't really, the best of friends at all. And then, right before high school. So it was the summer right before high school that event happened. And, I always wondered if my little sister, how much she would even remember him at this point. This year, we're getting close to, 20 years or whatever that would be. So it's crazy to, to think about how much time has gone by and how short and fast, life really is. But that event, obviously could have been, tragic, not just because of the loss of a father in your life and, leaving 5 kids and a mom, a working mom, all of a sudden by herself to handle all these things. I still think about my mom and how in the world did she handle that? How did she get us all through school and still playing our sports and still being active in the community and still, being involved with church stuff? It's just amazing that she was given that grace to do. And then dealing with us like in high school. So when I got to high school, from my own struggles and pain of that event and, feeling lost and then just reacting to life, so I very much was just in sports. I wrestled and I played baseball and I played football. Baseball, I only did the first year at Bishop Kenny. So speaking of Bishop Kenny sports, they're an elite, baseball program. And my desire to dedicate my life to that was more than I was willing to give at the time. So I only played baseball my first year. Then the beginning of the next year, it was very obvious that I hadn't put in the work to be, good enough to be on their team still. But I think even the year after I left, they might have been state champions again. They've got a few under their belt. But I did play football 4 years and then wrestled just my last 2 years. I had some buddies from the wrestling team that were in it. I was also involved in scouts that whole time. So another thing, just if you notice, that's where I think I was, reaching out to the Father's voice in the world for me. And so coaches very much were people I looked up to, scoutmasters and, leaders in the scout troops were other men as part of it. And there was one man in particular that was much younger than all those other role models for me. And he ended up being my brother-in-law one day.
Wow.
So I met this, my sister's boyfriend that she met at the campus ministry at FSU. So again, the fruits from what that ministry is doing is unbelievable. I would even say that it had a lot to do with how the love of God kept us from going a whole different direction, just all of us as siblings, and then my mom, and just the support from that, is unbelievable. So those were kind of, sports, my brother-in-law and scouts and stuff, that's where I felt very much still, any sense of being somebody, the Father's pride in me and his love and, learning how to become a man, so my brother-in-law was a big one, so camping out, all that stuff was very, for me, ways that I was learning to become a man still, but then sports, to be tough and to be strong, I did all that and weightlifting and all that kind of stuff. But then my brother-in-law taught me a new, portion of that, of manhood, he's the one that taught me about tools and working with my hands and building. So there's a lot of things in between my high school life that happened that it would just take forever to try to break all down.
Sure.
A lot of things happen, a lot of me being stupid and a lot of people loving me, to keep me up in life and to keep me moving forward with things. But
you would obviously say Justin's presence in your life is already God's arm kind of extending into your world, even though unaware. That's 100%. Did you have an awareness of that at the time, or was it kind of
no? That was totally reflecting, and a lot of it was even just through seminary formation. Was in meeting with a consistent spiritual director and the formation advising that you get in seminary, and just the amount of time, the way my life changed, were me praying consistently and reflecting on my story. And because I had a lot of things that I dealt with in seminary, of just more of that story of my father, and the wound there. And, part of my discernment, we might get into this more in a little bit, but, one of the big things that was huge for me to get through as part of my discernment was, am I seeking to become a priest, or am I drawn to the priesthood because I'm afraid now to cause that kind of pain to another family, to another woman,
Wow.
To kids that could potentially, be brought into this world through me. So I had to that was a big question for me that, was
Gosh,
lots
that's
of,
so deep. I mean, just to have that sense of knowledge to even contemplate that's why one of the reasons why you want to enter the priesthood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I had to, a big part of it was that's another way the enemy is trying to keep me from serving the Lord. Is what I eventually came to the point of that. Regardless, life has pains and sufferings and tragedies, and that's, we don't fear those things as Catholics, as Christians, when you have the Lord. So, if he was calling me to be a great husband and father, physically, married in the married vocation, that I would do that heroically. I'm called to live the priesthood heroically, but no, I felt very clearly him calling me and leading me to where I was. So
That's beautiful.
Thank you, seminary formators. Amazing. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in Tallahassee. We get there eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Still kind of unaware of the Lord's presence in your life. That changes fairly rapidly. In which circumstances? What was your, rocking up to Tallahassee, was it immediately just I'm just going to go do Catholic student union just like my older sibling Justin did? Or was it kind of maybe kind of hang around every once in a while?
Yeah.
Because a lot of kids go to college and they fall away from their faith.
Right.
And what's so beautiful about Florida State is the Catholic Student Union. I mean, where I went to school, we didn't have anything that huge. And so were you a part, when you got there, just like what Chez was saying, did you immediately go to CSU because you've heard so much about it, or walk us through that?
Yeah. So him getting me, like, all part of that, of my brother-in-law getting me there, Justin getting me there, was, he set up where I was going to live, and he set up, kind of a beginning path of like what I would study, which was basically nothing. But I just wanted, in my heart at the time, I wanted to be away from home in Tallahassee and having as much fun as I possibly could. So a bunch of people, that's another thing from Jacksonville. It's almost like there's the few that go to the Ivy League schools, the smart kids and MIT kids and that kind of thing, Columbia, NYU. But then most of us, it seems, from Bishop Kenny, go to Gainesville or go to Tallahassee. So they go to heaven or they go to hell.
We'll let you decide.
But then, and with that, so a portion of those kids go to Santa Fe, which is the community college in Gainesville, and then TCC, the community college in Tallahassee. So that's where I was going. And I didn't have I wasn't hostile to obviously I had this cultural Catholicism I grew up with. We never missed mass. Even in high school, we might've been up late having fun and doing crazy stuff, but we never missed church. We always, and not like with our parents, just we would be like, we have to go to church or else that's not good. Not that we were listening or actively participating or anything like that, but
right.
We were always there. So I still had that ingrained in me in college. So even if I wasn't, really living my faith, which I learned how to do, I still was at mass. So one of the cool things about, and I didn't really know, like my brother-in-law had told me, he had friends still there, and he had, and they had, brothers or siblings that were younger, like, in my age, that are there now. So I had this religious community that knew who I was and knew I was in town. And another thing, just the inspiration from Justin, my brother-in-law, was guitar. So he played guitar, and I started playing guitar as a sophomore in high school, and he would say, like, it didn't take long for me to surpass his, he wasn't really a guitar player. He just had one, and he had a beautiful Martin. I think his dad played a lot of guitar. But so those were the things, me coming in, I was athletic. I played guitar, and I had a big group of people I already knew from high school. And that's what made it maybe more challenging for me to fully dive in to the campus ministry there. Because if I didn't have all those people from high school, I probably would have more quickly, joined to make friends and to meet people.
Sure.
But so I would kind of go sometimes, but really it was what it turned out to be one of my best friends and brother and roommate eventually, Ty Nixon, which people in the diocese know the Nixons, Father Nixon's at St. Dominic, and Titus married Colleen McCarran. They're an old Tallahassee family that's been around forever too. And they met and fell in love in college and all that kind of stuff. But so he was actually the one that would call and reach out to me and said, "Hey, we're going to be playing football, or we're going to be playing something, at these fields at this time." And intramural sports was a big thing, all that kind of stuff. So that's what started to really draw me in. And then meeting these people that were just normal, like that they loved the same things I love. They loved, and they were just, there was a goodness and like, just a different thing about them from my friends. So all my other friends that came over with me from Jacksonville, their focus was your typical college life, which was to continue, and more experiencing more freedom than high school to do what they did in high school, which was to drink and to party and to, that's the college existence, and that's what they wanted to do. And so I met these other group of people that they might have done a little bit of that, but mainly they were just like living and they were studying, and they had this campus ministry that this community of people that they experienced and in a different way life. And I started more and more, was attracted to that they didn't need to go do the normal college thing. Like they wanted to do this thing where faith was the center of it, and faith was what drew them together. And they, what I really learned was like a way that they loved me in this kind of more unconditional way, not even knowing who I was, or just welcoming me into their circle without, no matter what my scars and wounds and whatever it was, they just wanted me to be there and for them to share Jesus with me. And so that's what happened. And then, so as I was getting more, where they became more of my friend circle, it was like the more and more like the other friends, we lost contact in a lot of ways. And even so, one of my friends, we moved to Tallahassee together and lived together in the house that would eventually become this awesome campus ministry house. That it got to a point where he knew that was my new friend circle so strongly, even though he was probably one of my best friends, we would say, from high school. We were both kind of avoiding this conversation of him moving out. And we both had the same thoughts. It's like he respected and, cared for me and what I was doing and where I was going. And he didn't really want to be involved with it for his own life. He just wasn't at that point for him to make, because he knew about the campus ministry and all that kind of stuff. But it's just funny how that stuff works out, where I was all worried, like, we're about to, throw this guy out, but he's like, I got to get out of here on his own. So I, the campus ministry in my first year, my first semester, became more and more, my friends. And it was the March for Life trip, the beginning of the spring, early or late January. Somebody dropped off, and Brother Allen, he was the kind of the music guru of the brothers, which also he roped me into doing music a lot. That he came up and said, we have this trip, it's free, so it's already been paid for, so you can just go. And that was a big turning point as far as like these people becoming more my friends, and then even closer to like a family unit, like this other group of just crazy on fire Catholics that I've ended up meeting and encountering and being one of them very, very quickly. So that trip up to pray for the unborn and to march, at our capital, to, in their defense, to give them a voice that they don't, was taken from them. That, that bus ride is what
15 hours. Yeah. Magic, absolute magic.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of, if you can, with your youth group, with anything, if you're in ministry, you shove them all on a bus together. I know right now, maybe that's not allowed, but, they'll form a bond that, stronger than any other event you could think of.
The graces that come out of that, attending a March for Life, is just unbelievable. I mean, we experienced it. My husband and I experienced it with the Catholic High kids here in Pensacola, my daughter's senior year. And then my daughter's freshman year of college, one of the college students backed out, and she calls me the night before and says, hey, we have an extra ticket. Do you want to go? And I packed my bags. And so it's just an amazing experience.
Yeah, and I was on the exact same March for Life trip. I don't think we even knew each other's names, but I was a transfer at FSU, and I wanted to come over for the Catholic Student Union experience because I had friends who had done it, and I just wanted to experience that aspect of college life and stuff. But I knew it was a welcoming community, but I knew like it's not like 10 people, like where you just get to know everybody in the same day and stuff. It's like it's hundreds of kids in and out, this massive network of intramural sports and retreats and all these sorts of things. So it's still just like, I gotta get to be friends with people. But then you get stuck on that same bus, and by the end of it, exactly like you said, they're just like, oh, these are my family members now. This is my people. This is my tribe, to be cliched as a Seminole. An amazing bonding experience that, I can't recommend highlight. Plus the added experience of like, oh, we're witnessing to the truth of the sanctity of life together. It was probably like one of the more meaningful things I had done with other people in my life at that point in time. So fully attest to your experience there as well.
Yeah. I thought, looking back now, I'm like, why didn't something happen in my, as far as my faith journey was going? Or like, speaking of a conversion. So these people had this thing that I was attracted to and wanted, but like, I still didn't feel like I had it. I knew I was welcomed into their group, but there was still something. And what I know now is like, it was this conversion, like, Jesus, the power of the resurrection, like actually being real in your heart and life, and the Eucharist and all these things we believe in actually being real things, not just this, whatever, like we say it is what it is, what I'm talking about. But, because I went on the retreat, my first, that was kind of one of the other deals that I felt like I, made, was that I would go to some stuff, especially like, my brother-in-law wanted me to go on retreat, but I made this friend from high school go. And so we were there together, and I had already kind of gotten plugged in to like the music group, but they wouldn't let me like participate. They would let me play sometimes on Wednesdays at the spirit nights, but for retreat, they were like, you need to go on retreat first. And so just looking back, it was always funny to me because that retreat, like I was so closed and I was trying to still be cool to my buddy and like not open up and be vulnerable, like to let the Lord, come into my heart. And so that first retreat I went on in the fall of 2008 or 2006. Is that right?
Yeah, it would have been Jimmy Creeby's retreat. Yeah.
But no. So the first retreat was Parker Jordan and I think.
Oh, yeah.
And then
Natalie. No.
Maybe. Okay. I don't know. It's all mixed up in a blur. Like we said, this has been 14 years now. So, but anyway, that first retreat, I didn't have this life-changing experience and just kind of was still searching for the Lord to, which, in the same time he's searching for me and all those years. But it was the next retreat. They did let me, like, obviously I got more involved with the music after the March for Life, and I did play for the spring retreat. And that is where me in that context, like helping lead prayer and worship, and then being able to see from where the praise band goes, in our tradition, oftentimes the music at retreats, like you're kind of behind everybody so people can focus on what's really important, which is praising and glorifying Jesus in his Eucharistic presence, at these retreats. And so the moment for me that changed my whole life and trajectory and everything, like this is the moment that I knew that God was real, that he loved me, and that he was calling me to, actually give my life to him and to serve him in life, was me watching, also praying and adoring and singing. I never used to sing. And at this moment, like I couldn't not. It's kind of that song I used to like a lot, that How Can I Keep From Singing? Chris Tomlin did a good version of the traditional version.
He did.
But I felt that in a real way where I couldn't, so I was singing the song everybody was singing, not that song. And watching 225, 250 young people with their arms up, all just praying, some crying, singing, all these different things going on. But you could feel this presence of Jesus's Eucharistic body, but then also the Holy Spirit, it's just crazy. Like all of the things that were going on in that room. And then for him to speak to me in that moment, that I am, I'm here, I'm with you, and I love you. And I just had all those things happen at the same time on that retreat. So that was the moment for me, that the spring of my first year, that really just changed so much of my life, but it was the beginning of, because, the Lord just wants to continue to heal and work on us and form us after his own heart, and all that stuff, was just the beginning, was that right then.
So that was your aha moment after that. And you fully recognized the love of Christ that he had and still has for you. What changed in you?
Yeah. So from that moment on, I wanted to be a real disciple, so school was already like the college classes was already like not, looking back now, I had no business being in school. Like I just am not that type of person. Like, so no, if I was to get a degree from a university, like it would have been just because I wanted to be there, not because I wanted to get into whatever field or this field. It's like you just go to college. That's kind of the mentality from going to a college preparatory school. I didn't know you could just go right to a trade program and like learn how to weld and then be a welder, which my type of personality, like really that's more like once I started learning to work with my hands, like I would have been much happier if like my career, like it was not going to be an engineer, like a whatever. I don't know. I didn't need to go to college.
Have a desk job, 9 to 5 in the office.
Mike Rowe, I was more, he would have been like, yeah, you're going to be a plumber or something like that. But I think that's all part of, I think God's grace is that. So I was there not really interested in, what to study. And so that was all just part of the confusion of where the Lord kept opening doors and speaking to me. And they were, they'd host these discernment weekends and, I didn't know. So me wanting to give my whole life, that's what hopefully everybody that calls himself a Christian discovers, whether you're going to be married or single or a celibate or religious, all of us, that's one of the issues with Christians in the world today is like to find our, joy and happiness, and not that everything's gonna be easy all of a sudden, but And I've tried to remind people that in my preaching. It's like the Lord didn't come to, take away like all of our, just the parts of life that are, hurt or are difficult, but he came to, be with us in it. That's the whole point of the incarnation and, the passion and death of Jesus is to enter into what, our messy lives and stuff. So I knew that I wanted to give my life to him and to serve him and to just be 100% in, on the team of Jesus in life. And so that my prayer became, and that's one thing, big thing that changed is that I actually started to pray. And like we had a 24-hour chapel in Tallahassee at Blessed Sacrament that all the college kids mostly, would take advantage of and be there all day or all night. I started playing music on a late Tuesday night or Monday night, whatever night it was. We would do this like praise and worship Eucharistic Holy Hour that we cleared with the people that did it. But just prayer became, a normal part of life. And so my prayer was always, what does this mean for me, Lord? Like, I'm not interested in these studies. And I kept like trying to figure out like if I'm supposed to like study something specific. But it just never was revealed as like, oh yeah, you should study, accounting or, he never like really was leading me down these paths, but he did keep inviting me to these other things and helping me meet, our seminarians at the time, the different priests involved, Monsignor Crawford, Monsignor Tugwell, and, the different priests that were at Thomas More and Blessed Sacrament and Good Shepherd, were just awesome witnesses. And just, I felt like drawn to, like whenever I was invited to a discernment thing to go and say yes and go and listen. And usually all of us went together anyway, like my whole college house, because none of them were married yet. And we took our faith and I took our community very seriously, like wanting to be, holy, wanting to live the gospel. And, but anyway, the Lord kept opening those doors and I was experiencing resistance from different people. Like, so even my closest friends, like when I told them, like, I think I'm supposed to leave because just my prayer becoming, what does this mean for me? How do I live the life you've called me to, of service, of heroic sanctity, And I had one night, I felt the Lord just calling me and showing me, and this never really happens for me, but I saw, just in a prayer, hands holding up a host, like we see at Mass, but I knew, they were just these hands, but I could tell like in my mind that they were my hands.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. So that was the first.
That just gave me chills. That's amazing.
But, so that's where I started to really look into and be open to a life in the priesthood because I loved like the religious order, the Brotherhood of Hope. Like I loved them and I met with them and wanted to learn more about them and they shut the door. They're like, no, like this is all fresh for you. Like you're newly kind of into your faith and, let's look at it next year. Let's look at it next year. But I just had on my heart, like, no, the Lord's like calling me to move with this stuff right now. I'm not going to like waste more time like doing, which is silly to say because it was so awesome. Like the community at CSU, is great. And like you do grow in your faith and grow for one another and really help each other, to be a faithful disciple. And like feeling at that same time, the Lord calling me somewhere else, was challenging. So my housemates, they were all like, I think you're nuts. I don't think this is really what you want. I was hearing other people like Chez and his groups, I got
to jump in here. I mean, so again, Father Hartley and I at the same place, but within this large ministry, there's different friendship circles and stuff, but everybody knew who you were. And for example, your classmate, another priest in our diocese, Father Kennel, son of a deacon, well established in our diocese, when he started discerning and kind of making it known, I'm thinking about seminary, it's like, obviously, like 100%. We're so glad. He was at the end of his 4-year process of college, getting his degree. It was like, go, this is your destiny. And there's been other people like that in CSU who you just know, like, man, but when we found out about Michael Hartley thinking about this decision, is like, it was a collective, just kind of what? And not because there was like, he wasn't living this debaucherous lifestyle or anything like that, but it was so new. It was so raw. And we were both, I think everyone observing was like, the conviction level is pretty intense. Like we could just, the things you're talking about were, you see kind of somebody come along gradually. You're like, I had a great experience in retreat. I'm totally on fire for Jesus, but let me just kind of grow in my faith and my relationships with people and stuff like that. And then kind of figure things, go to discernment retreat, go and, date around and stuff like that. And with Father Hartley, it was just instantaneous. Like, I would like to give my whole life away to the Lord immediately. Can you please show me how to do that? And it was just a different experience. And a lot of us were just like, pump the brakes, dude. Like, you got a lot of time and stuff, but that conviction that you mentioned was always just so apparent. What was the moment though, where you were just like, I'm going to sign some papers, I'm going to go down, and I'm going to really, really discern this in the seminary process?
Yeah. I mean, at the time, this is still just so long ago. I kind of just left it in the Lord's hands in a lot of ways. I was meeting with Monsignor Tugwell. I had driven out to, at the time, to Perry, Florida, where Monsignor Crawford was the pastor out there at Immaculate Conception, to meet with him. Just kind of still, I'm like sharing with people, like, like all of my closest friends are kind of like, don't think I need to, jump off the ship right now. Just that, but I'm like, but there's nothing that I'd rather do. I remember driving with Monsignor Tugwell at one point, cause I sent out like, recommendations requests from some of the brothers, from, one of the people, Dr. Tom Neal, who's the academic dean now at Notre Dame Seminary, but was in our diocese for a long time, getting his PhD at FSU. Like he wrote, I was just shocked, not shocked. He just being an academe himself, and then like knowing that kids come to college. Yes, it's great. CSU's great. They're coming alive in their faith, but they're here to be students. And, so he just kind of hit me hard on that. Like another example of like, not going to class as much, but like going to everything offered, from the campus ministry side point. But yeah, I would say, that the moment that I felt like the Lord inviting me to the priesthood and showing me that image I was talking about of my own hands with a host in it. And then just saying yes, consistently following to the discernment retreats, meeting with different priests. And then the fact that my, people I looked up to the most, Father Tim Halita and Father Mike Nixon. And at the time it was just this whole crew, Father Matt Worthen, Father Jim Greavy, some of them were musicians, some of them were super athletic, some of them were just, awesome, people to smoke cigars and, enjoy each other's company. Like they became such a close unit of people that I just wanted to continue to be around. So it wasn't, I would say even just before, I just knew, and I knew I could wait. Like I knew the Lord would still bless me there, but, I had no reason to stay, nothing was, cause getting a degree would have just meant nothing, except I would have been a priest 2 years later, or something like that. Like it wouldn't have changed. And so just to say that real quick, when I got to my first day of the seminary, I knew there was this affirmation from the Lord that I did choose and discern correctly. It was because one of my best friends in the world now, who we had never met. I'd heard about him, but we had never met before. And now just another great brother priest and fishing buddy that we take a lot of vacations together, Father Josh Swallows, who came through FSU and CSU. Then he started the UCF campus ministry, which now in today's, world, the brothers are there now too, all because the same graces and fruits of these people. So he was there before, like when my brother-in-law was there. And, it was just this full circle of like connections and the Lord saying like, yes, this was right. Cause we started the same day together in Miami at St. John Vianney Seminary. And it was just kind of like this funny thing. I had no clue he was going to be there, that we both showed up, and then we became the best of friends, like over the next 8 years of seminary formation. But, so it's just, funny. Not that seminary was easy or anything. It was very hard, getting, the Lord's healing throughout that whole process of just, which everybody needs at different points. But, always just knowing that he was leading the way for me. Every step that I went through, because my time, it took 8 years. I had 3 years at the minor seminary to get my degree, my bachelor's in philosophy, and then the 5-year program at St. Vincent de Paul to get like we all do, our master's of divinity.
Well, it does. It's evident to me that God orchestrated all of this from even at such a young age, and even going through the trials and tribulations, and also the joys that you had and still have. I understand that your first assignment after ordination was at St. Rita's, and now it seems like you've come full circle. Now you're the pastor at St. Rita's, and just share just a couple of snippets of how you've changed from the moment that you were assigned to St. Rita's, how many years ago? Back from 2016 to 2021. Yeah.
So this June 4th, me and the 3 other guys that got ordained with me, Father Thomas Kennel, Father Paul Moody, and Father Dustin Fedden, all for our diocese. So y'all probably know them. we celebrate our 5th anniversary, this June 4th.
Congratulations.
Yeah. But it's wild. You never in a million years do you think that this is what God has planned for you or anything. Because I had to look up when I found out from Bishop Parks that I was going to St. Rita. I knew who Father Kevin Johnson was because he was forever, while we were in college, the priest in another priest in Tallahassee. So he was at what is that parish called?
St. Louis.
St. Louis, yeah.
Googa Mooga.
Yeah, it's the one that's like outside. The only thing we ever did there was play Googa Mooga, this crazy game.
Throw bags of flour at each other. It's epic.
Gosh.
It's amazing. Please send your kids to Florida State to do things like this. It's unbelievable.
And this podcast is sponsored by Florida State.
But yeah, so he was the pastor at St. Rita. He had gotten moved out there, and I had to look on Google St. Rita Catholic Church, like in Santa Rosa Beach, Florida. I had no idea. And then, like we said at the beginning, I had no idea what 30A was. We only grew up in the Atlantic Coast beaches, Jack's Beach, all the way to, St. Augustine. That was where we went to the beach if we wanted to go to the beach. So it's just a whole new world, a part of the state that I've been here. My family's been in forever. It's crazy. Just the parts of it you never know exist. But then to make it even more crazy, like after a year and a half of being an associate, and so in my mind, I'm going to be an associate for these 3 or 4 years. I'll get moved to another place, be an associate again. Being a pastor is years down the road, 8, 10, whatever. Father Nixon was the first pastor, the first one, like, I guess, but even him had, I think 2 or 3 assignments before he became a pastor, but he was for sure like the first younger guy to really take on a parish. So now I completely, I think, wrecked his record because a year and a half, Father Kevin was struggling with diabetes and went into renal failure at one point, and he chose on his own, not to seek further treatments for it. And so he passed away. I think January 8th is the official date. But just a year and a half into my first, assignment, my first few years of priesthood, and nobody knew, he told Bishop Bill, like, oh yeah, Mike will be fine. Like just let him stay, he'll take care of things or whatever. I'm like, why are you telling him this? I didn't know he was saying that to Bishop, because Bishop would go visit him and stuff. And I just assumed somebody else would either come in or I would be moved somewhere else. I didn't know what was going to happen. And then sure enough, Bishop calls and says, yeah, no, Kevin thought you'd be fine. And so what do you think about just staying there and being the administrator? I was like, yeah. I mean, I've always just had that kind of yes. And I think, it's kind of funny because I have a strong Marian heart and devotion, and that is her thing, to say yes. Thy will be done. I'm your servant, do what you will. So I've always kind of had that. I'm like, yeah, if you think that's right, you're our shepherd. Like, if you think I'm supposed to stay here, I'll stay here. And so I ended up becoming the administrator and then just kind of holding the fort down. They sent me, another religious priest to help me for a little bit. And then at one point and throughout conversations with Bishop, I said, if you're going to keep me, like, I don't want to be in this limbo, like, administrator thing. Like, if you plan to keep me here, I want to become the pastor so I can feel like I'm actually rooted here and like do things I want to do and not, have to be like worried, is something I'm going to do, keep me from being the pastor. So there's a sense of stability that comes with being the actual pastor rather than the administrator. Anyway, so Bishop was like, yeah, all right. And so then I think that next May 22nd is St. Rita's feast day. And so we celebrated her feast day with Bishop, and I was installed that day as the pastor. And so now it's been like another 2 years in COVID, and I don't know about if that was a snippet, but it's been a crazy first 5 years, and I would have never guessed it, but it's been extremely awesome, and learning what Santa Rosa Beach and 30A is, and so who knows how long I'll be there.
It's been a pleasure getting to hear your story in a deeper way. I love it. Sharmane, I know you have a history in worship and leading worship and stuff, and just like the experience of worship being the key that unlocked kind of this whole journey with Christ in the biggest way. And just and a word of encouragement, if you're listening and you've ever had kind of a moment of opening up, being able to be in that place where you experience and fully praise the Lord, or being talk to your priest, talk to your parish, find a place where that can be a possibility. Often in these retreat settings, it is I'm sure you experienced this, Sharmane. I've experienced this as well. The first times really opening myself to the Lord in worship is transformative. So it's really cool hearing that. Well, guys, we thank you so much for listening to this episode with Father Hartley. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks' time as Bishop Bill kicks off his first teaching series, which we're so excited about, to listen to him guide us as a shepherd of our diocese. But until then, we'll see you next time. Thank you, Father Hartley.
Thank you, Father Hartley.
Glad to be here. Thank y'all.
Thank you for tuning in today to the Gaudium et Spes podcast. If you would like to know more about our podcast, please visit gaudiumetspes.net or go to ptdiocese.org and click on the button that says podcast. If you listen to the audio version from an app such as iTunes, Stitcher, or Spotify, be sure to rate, review, and comment. If you watched us on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe or leave us a comment there as well. Thank you for joining us.